and welcome back to Pike Creek Farm. My name is Renee and I live in Michigan, in the thumb of Michigan, and I am here to show you today how I can potatoes. Today I am doing not raw pack like some of the ball recipes I have done, but this is going to be plain potatoes, and I am parboiling them, blanching them actually, you would say, for 2 minutes. Let me show you some that are on soaking. Okay, here are some potatoes that are soaking after I've peeled them. You have to always peel potatoes. You can't can them with the skins on. Any vegetable growing in the ground, like carrots, any of them have to be peeled because the botulism spores or any other kind of bad bacteria can grow in the skins easily. So we peel them, and I have them soaking in cold water. I have rinsed them once, and now I have them soaking in water waiting for the water on the stove to boil. I have one batch in there already, waiting to come to a boil for 2 minutes. It's kind of a cloudy day today and dreary. It was actually all white this morning when I woke up, so it was a good afternoon to stock the pantry. I received a box of at least 20 pounds of potatoes, free from a local farmer, and so I decided to take advantage of it. Here are potatoes on the stove waiting to come to a boil. They'll boil for 2 minutes. I had the water boiling, but then when I put them in, it took them down, so now it just has to come back up, and I will take them out and rinse them under cold water. Well, not cold water. I will rinse them to get any excess starch, and then I'll pack them in the jars, add half a teaspoon of salt and hot water, and then the lids and the rings, and put them in the canner. This is the book that I'm using, the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning. And here's the page, 417 on potatoes. And I am doing quart jars, so I will add 1 teaspoon of salt to each jar. And these potatoes have to be pressure canned because there's not enough acid in them. And so once I have them in the jars, I will put them in my pressure canner and then follow the rules for my canner, which includes 3 quarts of water in the bottom. And I have the water on simmering now so that it's the same temperature as the jars that will be going into it, so there'll be no thermal shock. Here are the potatoes that are ready to go into the jars now. So that will be my next step. I have added the salt to each of the jars, and now I will add the potatoes. Okay, I'm going to fill the jars now. I like these potatoes a lot for fried potatoes, for putting around a roast or a stew. You can make potato soup from them. I have seen where people put that they use them for potato salad. That intrigues me. And also that they have used them for mashed potatoes. Some people say they're too, what do you call it, starchy, but gummy, but I'm not sure. I haven't tried that, but I've used them in soups and stews, around roast, for frying up, to have for breakfast, for have for dinner, to go with sausage. I've used them to roast and season and roast in the oven. I'm going to check what the headspace is. I think it's 1 inch, but I want to make sure, so I got my book out, and cook 2 minutes, boil. For whole potatoes, you do it for 10 minutes. I did not have whole potatoes. Add your salt, fill the jars with hot potatoes and fresh hot water, leaving 1 inch head space. And then you gotta remove the bubbles. So, let me see. And the 1 inch head space is right here at that bottom ridge. Well, these are yellow potatoes, so they actually have less starch than white potatoes or russet potatoes. So I'm adding in the water now. I have more water on the stove heating up. Okay. Bubble de bubble de bubble. I have found that potatoes do absorb some of the liquid when they're on the pantry shelf, but they're still okay. And they might look discolored at the top of the jar, but when you go to cook them, they all taste the same and they all end up looking the same. So now I am going to take a cloth and wipe the top to make sure that there's no pieces of potato or anything that will stick to it. I had my lids washed and in warm water. You don't have to boil the lids like you used to, the new lids. And you don't crank the lid on. You put it to its finger tight. When it wants to stop, you let it stop. So here's the first jar ready to go in. Okay, I have 2 more quarts to fill after this. I have some more potatoes on blanching to fill those quarts, and I still have extra potatoes that I peeled that I will keep soaking in the water, and that has been treated with some citric acid with a little bit of lemon juice so that they will not turn brown. So let me add the water to this one. And we will debubble. Make sure you go down in the middle too to get any air pockets that might be there, and then along all the sides. And then see if they fit underneath up to that 1 inch level. Wipe the rim. Another good thing that you can do when you're wiping the rim, it gives you another opportunity to make sure that there is no chips or anything on the edge of the jar, because if there is, it won't seal. Put the ring on, push it to where it's tight, but just finger tight, don't crank it. And we'll put this jar in the canner. Okay, here's the last 2 quarts. I still have some raw potatoes left soaking, so I think I'll put them in pints. And I have a recipe from Ball that uses raw potatoes, and it is called herbed potatoes, and we like them a lot. So, and pints work out really nice just for the 2 of us for some meals. So I think I will do those that way because I'm getting low on those down in the pantry. Okay. I lost the debubbler. Oh, right there in front of me. I was really happy to get these yellow potatoes because they can up so nice, and they're also my husband's favorite. If I am buying potatoes to cook. They are his favorite. Okay. Add a little bit more. There. Okay. Wipe these last 2 jars. Put the lids on, the flat part, and now the rings. And it's also normal when you pressure can, I think any canning, but I know pressure canning for sure, when you go to take your jars out, these rings can be real loose. It does not mean the jars will not seal, and you're not to touch them. You just let them go. And I've had that happen many times, and the lids are sealed, just the rings became loose. And you don't store your jars with lids on, with rings on them. You store them with lids, but not rings. So you don't. So I will put these into the canner. Okay, there's the 7 quarts of potatoes in the canner. The water level came up quite high on them. I'm used to doing pints more, but it's the same amount of water that I always put in. It's just how it gets dispersed. So now I need to put the lid on and lock it, turn the heat up, and let it come to where there is steam coming out of the vent. Here's my lid. So before I can, I always make sure that that works. I look into that vent pipe and check the seal, that it looks good. You do have to replace these every few years. Mine hasn't have any cracks. It looks nice and not dry, so we are good to put this lid on. Okay, on mine, which is the Presto 23 quart, and it's the one that's made for a flat top stove, you line up the 2 arrows, and then you twist until the handles line up. The lock came up, and now I have to wait for the weight to start to wiggle, go back and forth, kind of like a hula dance. Not go crazy, but a steady, slow, not real slow, a steady rhythm back and forth. And then I set the timer for 45 minutes. The jiggler weight has started to wiggle in a nice rhythmic level, so I have reduced the heat some because that's what I need to do to keep mine going like this and not going crazy. It takes a little bit of playing to figure out what works for yours. I don't follow whatever the gauge says. Even though it is on the right weight, that is not how we go. We follow this. So I need to set my timer for 40 minutes now because I have quarts in there. See, if you look here, hot pack, pints are 35 and quarts are 40. And that is down here. We have it on the weighted gauge pressure canner and 10-pound weight, and that is what I have on mine. So my timer's set at 40, and when it hits that, I turn off the heat and let it depressurize naturally. Let it come back to 0, let the lock go down, and I let it set for like 10 minutes after that, and then I will take the lid off. The lock has dropped, the pressure's down to 0. I've let it set for about 10 minutes after that happened. I'm going to take off the weight now. No sound. So now I'm going to let it wait like 5 more minutes, and then I will take the lid off. I remove the lid. Everything looks good. No buckling of lids. Oop, there's some steam. I'm going to let it sit for just a few minutes so that it gets used to the cooler temperature in the room before I pull them out. They are still boiling inside the jars. Boiling, as you can see, but they have all sealed. The tabs are down if there was pinging. So 7 quarts of yellow potatoes. I will let these stay overnight, and then tomorrow afternoon, evening, I will wash them off, remove the rings, label them, and put them in my pantry downstairs.